In the cold dawn of a forgotten mountain town, a wounded German shepherd appears at a sheriff's doorstep, carrying a silent little girl in his jaws. She won't speak. She won't let go of the dog. But the drawings she begins to make. They reveal something far more terrifying than anyone could imagine, a hidden compound, a lost twin, and a mother held prisoner underground. What started as a rescue becomes a race against time to stop a ritual no child should ever witness. The fog in Grey Ridge that morning lay so thick it muffled sound and blurred shapes into ghost-like silhouettes. Sheriff Clint Harper sipped lukewarm coffee from a chipped ceramic mug on the front porch of his pinewood cabin. The air was cool, not yet freezing, but wet with the most of an Oregon dawn. He was a tall man with a solid build that had softened with age, broad shoulders still wrapped in the frame of the Army Ranger he once was. His face bore the weight of a life lived hard, deep lines around his eyes, a scar along his jaw from an old deployment, and a beard now more silver than black. At 52, Clint had retreated from most of the world after losing his wife 3 years earlier to breast cancer. The grief hadn't broken him, but it had hollowed something out. He lived alone, a mile outside town, accompanied only by his own thoughts and an old hunting rifle that leaned permanently near the door. That solitude shattered the moment something moved at the edge of the tree-line. At first, he thought it was a bear. A large, dark figure emerged from the fog like a specter. Clint set the mug down slowly, squinting. It wasn't a bear, it was a dog. A German shepherd, large and muscled, its fur tangled and slick with blood and mud. Brambles clung to its legs. Its amber eyes were locked forward in focused intensity. Across its back was something bundled and slumped, a child. Clint's instincts flared. He stepped off the porch, boots crunching damp gravel. "Whoa there," he said softly, hands held where the dog could see them. "Easy now." The shepherd didn't growl, but its gait faltered, revealing its exhaustion. Its breathing was labored, chest rising and falling in shudders. On its back was a girl, no older than 7, limp as a rag doll. Her skin was pale, her face streaked with dirt and dried tears. Her hair, long and blonde, fell across the shepherd's flank like sunlight on ash. Clint dropped to a knee, heart beating in a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. The dog stopped 10 feet away and didn't move, its stance protective, as if unsure whether Clint was a threat or a savior. He recognized the signs. This wasn't just any dog. The harness, tattered but unmistakable, was military issue. Clint reached out slowly, not for the dog but for the girl. Her arms dangled, scraped and bruised. One shoe was missing. Clint murmured, "It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you." The dog didn't move as Clint slid the girl into his arms. She was cold, but breathing. Her lips were dry and cracked. Clint rose, and the shepherd followed, limping now, one paw dragging. They entered the cabin together, the door closing behind them like the end of a prayer. Inside, the cabin was simple, a wood stove in the corner, maps pinned above the fireplace, and the scent of pine and coffee always lingering. Clint laid the girl on his worn leather couch and grabbed a wool blanket. The dog curled beside her, resting its head on her side as if unwilling to let her go. Clint called the one person he trusted, Aaron Langford, the town's vet and unofficial medic. Aaron had known Clint since high school. She was 49, slender but wiry strong, with thick auburn curls tied in a low bun and deep brown eyes that missed nothing. She wore oversized glasses and a zip-up vest over scrubs nearly every day. Aaron had once dreamed of becoming a trauma surgeon, but a drunk driver had shattered her femur and her dreams at 22. She returned to Grey Ridge and built a life of service in smaller, quieter ways. Practical, unflinching, and compassionate to a fault, Erin carried her own scars beneath her brisk tone and sharp eyes. She arrived 20 minutes later in a dusty green Jeep, medical bag in hand. The shepherd didn't growl as she entered but stood between the girl and the door, ears alert. "What on God's green earth?" she breathed, kneeling beside the child. "Where did you find her?" Clint didn't answer at first. "The dog brought her. Out of the woods." Erin examined the girl quickly. "She's dehydrated. Some bruising, superficial cuts. Not recent. No signs of head trauma, but she's been through something, Clint. Look here." She gently lifted the girl's sleeve, revealing faint circular scars near her wrist. "Burns. Deliberate ones." Clint's expression hardened. She didn't say a word the whole time. Not even when I picked her up. She's probably in shock. Aaron pulled out a small 4-kit. Help me set her up. As they worked, Clint finally looked at the dog. He's not just trained. He's military. He crouched and carefully lifted a corner of the harness. There's a hidden pocket. Inside was a small, sealed pouch. Clint opened it and found a dog tag. It read, Monroe, Rachel L., USMC K-9 Division. Aaron recognized the name. Wait, wasn't she the woman who disappeared from that federal investigation down near Ashwood last year? Clint nodded. Undercover with one of those isolationist religious groups. No one ever found her. Aaron's gaze drifted to the girl. Could this be her daughter? As if on cue, the girl stirred, just slightly. Her eyes blinked open, blue, wide, and terrified. But when she saw the dog, she reached out weakly and buried her fingers in his matted fur. The German shepherd didn't move, just let out a soft whine and nuzzled her hand. Aaron whispered, this wasn't a chance. This dog brought her here. Straight to you. Clint looked toward the window, the fog still thick beyond the glass, his coffee mug forgotten on the porch. Which means someone knew I'd help. The child closed her eyes again, hands still clutching fur like a lifeline. Clint placed the dog tag on the table and stared at it, his breath heavy in the silence. Aaron, he said quietly, I think we just got pulled into something a whole lot bigger than we expected. The following morning, Gray Ridge emerged beneath a pale winter sun, filtered through layers of mist and pine needles. The town was waking slowly, fog lifting from rooftops and trails. Clint Harper's cabin remained quiet, tucked behind a line of firs like a forgotten ranger post. Inside, a fire crackled low in the cast-iron stove, scenting the air with sap and smoke. The girl, still unnamed, was curled on the couch, half buried under a flannel blanket. The German shepherd lay curled against her side, his amber eyes open and alert, watching Clint from across the room. The sheriff had tried sleeping in his armchair, but his body refused to rest. His mind was turning over too many questions. He rubbed his hands over his face, stood, and stretched the ache from his back. The dog tracked every move. Clint moved to the kitchen, poured coffee, and returned to check the girl's pulse again, more out of anxiety than necessity. She stirred lightly, her hand still gripping the dog's fur. She's stable, Aaron Langford said quietly behind him. She had stayed the night, sleeping only a couple of hours in the guest room. Now she stood in the hallway, already dressed, hair tucked beneath a wool beanie, her glasses resting on the bridge of her nose. Clint nodded, eyes on the girl. She hasn't spoken a word. Aaron crossed the room and crouched beside the child. Trauma like this, it can silence a child for days, weeks. Some never speak again. Did you see the tattoo? Clint asked. Behind her ear. Aaron pulled on latex gloves and gently brushed aside the girl's hair. A faint geometric symbol, an eye enclosed in a triangle, had been inked there in fine lines. I've seen this before, she murmured, more to herself than him. Not here, not in town. But when I worked a temp contract down in Jefferson County. A girl came in for prenatal care. She had the same tattoo, said it meant purity of vision. Belonged to some new religious group. The fellowship? Clint asked. Morning Path, Aaron confirmed. They're reclusive, but not illegal. They've got land up in Pinewater Ridge. Been there for years. Clint exhaled slowly. This girl didn't wander off. She was brought out. By that dog. Which means someone trained him for this exact mission. Aaron stood. We need to know who. Clint walked to the dining table where he had laid out the dog tag. Rachel Monroe. He tapped the tag. K-9 handler. Went missing a year ago. She was reportedly undercover with a federal task force, investigating the Morning Path Fellowship. Aaron frowned. You think this girl is her daughter? She has the same blue eyes, same build, maybe 7 years old. Just then, a rustling sound interrupted them. The girl was awake, sitting up. She didn't speak, but her gaze was intense, alert. Clint approached cautiously. Morning, sweetheart. He knelt, not too close. You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you. She didn't nod or speak, but reached beside her and pulled out something from under the blanket, a sheet of paper folded in quarters. She offered it to Clint with a hand that trembled only slightly. He unfolded it and saw a drawing. Not the scrawled stick figures of a child playing pretend, but something structured. Purposeful. A rectangular building. Trees around it. Inside, tiny figures. In one corner was the same triangular eye symbol. Aaron leaned over his shoulder. She's trying to tell us something. Clint looked up. This isn't just where she came from. This is where other children still are. The girl reached again, this time pulling a crayon from the table. She added to the drawing, a second smaller figure beside the first. Identical. She has a sister, Clint said. A twin, Aaron whispered. They were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Clint went for his sidearm out of reflex. Aaron stepped behind the couch, shielding the girl. Clint opened the door a crack. A woman stood outside, bundled in a blue rain jacket, holding a thermos. Clint, it's just me, Nora. Nora Briggs was the town's postmistress and longtime neighbor, a woman in her late 50s with short gray curls and bright eyes that missed little. She had a habit of showing up unannounced, usually bearing food or coffee under the guise of checking in. Widowed for more than a decade, Nora had become a kind of motherly figure for much of Grey Ridge. Sorry, didn't mean to spook you, she said, stepping back. I saw Aaron's Jeep and figured someone was sick. Clint stepped out, closing the door behind him. Now's not a good time, Nora. Nora tilted her head. There's talk, Clint. About the fellowship. About a child missing from their school. Not now, he said more firmly. She held up the thermos with a knowing look. Well, coffee's still hot. Tell Aaron I said hi. As Nora walked away, Clint noticed something he hadn't before, a black SUV parked 2 lots down, engine off, windows tinted. He stared at it for a long second before stepping back inside and locking the door. She okay? Aaron asked. She heard something, Clint said. And that SUV parked nearby isn't local. Aaron was already packing her bag. We need to move. If they're looking, they'll come here next. Clint crouched next to the girl again. Do you know a place called Pinewater Ridge? The girl's eyes widened slightly. That's where your sister is? A single nod. Clint stood. We're going to need help. I'll call an old contact in Portland, FBI liaison. If Rachel Monroe really was undercover, they'll know. Aaron added, and we need to keep her safe until then. We can't go to the clinic. Too public. I've got a hunting cabin, Clint said. Halfway up Ridgeback Trail. Off-grid. No one knows about it. Then that's where we go. The girl climbed off the couch slowly, legs shaky, but she walked on her own. Axel stood immediately, positioning himself beside her, pressed close to her side like a sentinel. Clint watched the two of them. That dog isn't just her guardian. He's part of the plan. Aaron picked up her keys. Then we'd better follow his lead. The trail up Ridgeback was narrow, winding through fir trees and broken boulders, damp with last night's frost. Clint's battered Ford pickup growled slowly along the incline, its headlights dimmed to avoid attracting attention. The cab was silent, except for the occasional clink of Axel's tags as the German Shepherd sat alert beside the girl in the back seat. She leaned against him as if drawing energy from his warmth. The dog didn't move unless she did, like a living shield wrapped in fur and muscle. Clint's hands were tight on the steering wheel, eyes scanning the rearview mirror and the trees beyond. Erin sat beside him, map in her lap, her sharp eyes flicking from the road to the GPS unit that was definitely not functioning this far up the mountain. Her face looked drawn in the pale morning light, lips pressed thin, but her voice was steady when she finally spoke. We'll lose cell service entirely soon. That's our best defense right now. Clint nodded. Only way up here is through the old ranger path. Even locals don't come this far anymore. I remember, she said. You brought Marie up here when she was pregnant, didn't you? Clint's jaw tensed. He didn't add more, and Erin didn't push. Instead, she reached back and handed a granola bar to the girl. She took it with a hesitant hand, unwrapped it slowly, and broke off a small piece to feed to Axel before eating anything herself. She trusts him more than anyone, Erin murmured. He earned it, Clint said. This dog didn't just find her. He stayed with her, crossed miles of terrain, brought her straight to me. That's not Chance. She still hasn't spoken, Aaron said. But she's trying to communicate. The drawings. Her body language. Clint looked in the mirror again. I want her safe. And if that means staying up here until the snow traps us in, so be it. After another mile, the truck turned onto an overgrown lane hidden beneath overhanging branches. The tires bumped over rocks and roots until the cabin came into view, small, weathered, and almost indistinguishable from the surrounding forest. It sat near a narrow stream that shimmered faintly in the light, roof sagging slightly, chimney blackened from years of winter fires. Clint had built it with his father before the man died of a stroke. It was meant to be a retreat, a place no one else knew. Here we are, Clint said. Home sweet hideout. Inside, the air smelled of dust and dry pine. The furniture was simple, one main room with a fireplace, 2 cots against opposite walls, and a battered kitchen counter with rust-stained plumbing. Clint lit the gas lamp, casting a soft glow over the room. Axel immediately made a round of the cabin, sniffing corners and checking under furniture before returning to the girl's side. She walked the perimeter slowly, eyes taking everything in, then reached for a stubby pencil left in a drawer. Clint handed her a notepad. Want to draw? He asked gently. She nodded once and settled cross-legged on the floor, Axel beside her. Erin unpacked her medical bag and began restocking supplies in a corner. I'll need to clean those wounds again before tonight, she told the girl. You can draw while I do it, okay? The girl didn't answer aloud but didn't flinch either. She began sketching, quick confident lines. Within minutes, an image began to form, a tall structure with a circular emblem at the top, like the iron triangle tattoo behind her ear. Below it were children standing in rows. Clint crouched beside her. Is this where you came from? She nodded. He pointed to one of the child figures. Is this you? She pointed to 2, identical. Your sister, he asked. Another nod. Then she drew a third figure. An adult, face marked with lines of distress, long hair tied back. Your mom? Erin asked, gently laying a hand on the girl's back. The child looked up, her face pale but composed, and handed Clint something from her coat pocket. A metal object, scratched, with rust along the edges. Dog tags. Clint read the engraving. Monroe, Rachel L., USMC, 03. Clint stood, breath catching. Rachel Monroe is her mother. Before Erin could respond, a loud crunch came from outside. Not a wild animal. Tires on frost-stiffened leaves. Clint signaled for silence and extinguished the lamp. The cabin was plunged into shadow. Erin gathered the girl and pulled her behind the cot. Axel stood, posture rigid, hackles rising. Clint grabbed his shotgun from the corner and moved to the window. He parted the curtain just slightly. A black SUV, similar to the one he saw back in town, was parked 100 yards down the slope. Lights off. No movement. He cursed under his breath. We're not alone, he whispered. As if sensing the tension, the girl drew something else quickly. A man. Square face, heavy coat, eyes hollow. She handed it to Clint and tapped her pencil on the drawing twice. She knows him, Erin said. Clint turned to Axel. The dog was already at the door, silent but vibrating with readiness. We can't let them get close, Clint said. There's a back trail that leads to an old ranger tower about a mile from here. No one's used it in years. We can't outrun them with her in this condition, Erin warned. I'll buy time. You take her. Go now. Axel stays with you. No, Erin said. We all go. We stick together. That's what she needs. Clint hesitated, then nodded. He opened the cabinet, pulled out a weatherproof satchel, and stuffed it with first aid supplies, a flashlight, and a flare gun. The girl watched quietly, then rose and took Axel's leash, even though she didn't clip it. She didn't need to. He followed her anyway. They slipped out the back just as the first figure emerged from the trees near the SUV. Dressed in black, no law enforcement insignia. No flashlight. Just a man moving like he knew the terrain. A hunter, not a rescuer. Clint led them down the back path, thick with ferns and rotting logs. The girl never cried or stumbled. She kept pace. Axel trotted beside her like a shadow, ears swiveling constantly. By the time they reached the edge of the clearing near the old ranger tower, daylight had begun to fade. The girl pointed toward it, then held up 3 fingers, tapped them twice on her chest, and pointed to the horizon. "She's trying to say something," Aaron whispered. "She's not just showing us where she's from," Clint said. "She's telling us something's going to happen." 3 days, Aaron guessed. "That's how long we have." Clint looked at the girl. 3 days until what? The girl looked at him solemnly, then drew a circle in the dirt with her foot, stepped into it, and mimed locking her hands behind her back. "Some kind of ceremony," Clint said, cold growing in his stomach. "We need help," Aaron said. "More than just the FBI." Clint nodded, hand resting on Axel's head. "Then it's time we made some calls." The forest stretched endlessly around the old Ranger Tower, its skeletal silhouette rising like a forgotten monument against the bruised sky. Clint Harper scanned the ridgeline through binoculars, watching for movement, though the silence felt heavier than any sound. They had reached the tower less than an hour before sunset, climbing its creaking wooden stairs with the girl nestled in Clint's arms and Axel leading the way. Aaron had checked the structure quickly and found it stable but bare, no power, no heat, just dust and memory. But it would have to do. Inside the narrow observation room, the girl sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring in another page of Clint's old notepad. Axel lay beside her, his head resting on his paws but his eyes never closing. The bond between them had only grown stronger in the last 24 hours. Aaron worked by lantern light, her hands carefully redressing the girl's shoulder wound. Aaron's mind, however, was spinning elsewhere. She kept glancing at Clint, who was pacing the length of the narrow room. "We're going to need help," she said quietly, voice taut. "That SUV, those men, they're not from town. And they're not giving up." "We'll get help," Clint said, voice low but firm. "I've got someone in mind. Former FBI. Old friend. Not the kind to file reports before acting." Aaron paused, raising a brow. "You never told me you knew anyone like that." "You never asked," Clint replied, offering the faintest ghost of a smile. "His name's Noah Vance. We served together during my last deployment. He's been working as a private investigator the past few years, mostly off the books. If anyone can track the movement of this group, it's him." He stepped outside with the sat phone he had stashed at the cabin, one of the few tools that worked beyond the cell tower grid. Signal was weak, but a single bar flickered in and out. He leaned against the railing and dialed. 3 rings. Then a gravelly voice answered. "You better not be calling to reminisce, Noah." "It's Clint." There was a pause. "Well, hell. Are you alive?" "Barely," Clint said. "I need a favor." "Not the kind you put in writing." Clint gave him the short version: the girl, the dog, the drawing, the SUV, and the threat of something planned within 3 days. When Noah spoke again, his voice had sharpened. "You're still in Grey Ridge still?" "About an hour out, up near the old Ranger Tower." "I'll be there by dawn," Noah said. "Don't move unless you have to. You're being watched. Probably more than you realize." Back inside, the girl had finished her drawing. She handed it to Aaron with a solemn face. Aaron sat cross-legged beside her, analyzing the crude shapes. The central building reappeared, now with what looked like concentric circles drawn beneath it. "It's underground," Aaron muttered. "She's saying there's something below the chapel." Clint returned and read over her shoulder. "Storage cells." The girl tapped the page and pointed to a figure drawn beneath the surface level. It had long hair and hands outstretched. "She's drawing her mother," Aaron said. The girl pointed at herself and mimed being pulled upward, then pointed to the figure underground. "She escaped," Clint interpreted. "But Rachel didn't." Aaron swallowed. "Clint, if Rachel's still alive, they're holding her as leverage." A soft bark from Axel made everyone freeze. He stood, tail stiff, staring out the slatted window. A moment later, they heard it too, the distant hum of an engine. Clint looked through the binoculars again. A single headlight bobbed along the mountain trail far below. Then it blinks 3 times and vanished. "Friend," Clint said. "That's Vance's signal. He made it early." They descended the tower quickly. Clint met the SUV at the base of the trail with Axel by his side. The vehicle that rolled up was a matte black Jeep Wrangler, coated in forest dust. The driver stepped out, a tall, wiry man in his early 50s with sharp gray eyes, dark skin, and a crooked grin. He wore a leather bomber jacket and carried himself with the cautious grace of someone always prepared to reach for a weapon. "Noah Vance," he said, shaking Clint's hand. "I'm not used to dragging myself out into the woods for anything less than a corpse. This might still turn into one," Clint said. "But I'm hoping we can avoid it." Inside the tower, Vance greeted Aaron with a nod and sat cross-legged across from the girl. "So you're the brave one," he said gently. "You made it through the woods. That's not something many people could do." The girl didn't answer, but she offered him her most recent drawing. Vance studied it, noting the lines, the angles, the positions of symbols. "This is detailed. She's seen it more than once. She says the chapel has something beneath it," Clint said. "And that's where her mother is." Vance nodded slowly. "And we have 2.5 days before something happens. Whatever it is," Aaron added, "it involves multiple children. The drawings make it look like a gathering. Something ritualistic." "I've seen this before," Vance muttered. "Not here. But in Arizona, 5 years ago. Private cult. Used kids as leverage. Had their own symbols, teachings, even false birth records. Took federal agents months to break through. But it always starts the same way: secrecy, isolation, and children too scared to speak." He turned to Clint. "We need confirmation. Proof. Something solid to take to the state office. Without it, Carter walks away." Clint reached for the girl's dog tags. "We have these. Monroe's name. Her military record. And we have a dog." Vance looked at Axel, who returned the gaze without blinking. "That dog is trained. He could have been instructed to find the safest handler she knew of, maybe someone Rachel mentioned once. That's how he brought the girl to you." "So we follow the trail back," Clint said. "We go to the compound." Vance shook his head. "Not yet. We scout first. Tomorrow, before dawn. I'll go in low, see what I can pick up. If we're lucky, there's still time." That night, the girl fell asleep curled against Axel again, her breathing soft and steady. Aaron sat beside her with a notepad, transcribing details from the drawings. Vance kept watch near the window, rifle across his lap. Clint didn't sleep. He stepped outside beneath the stars and whispered a silent prayer, not to any god, but to the memory of Rachel Monroe, to the mother who had trained a dog to carry out the unthinkable, and to the other child still waiting in the dark. Dawn broke slowly over the dense forest, the light pushing through pine needles like fingers parting heavy curtains. From the top of the old ranger tower, the world below looked deceptively peaceful, quiet, still, distant. But Clint Harper knew better. Beneath that blanket of mist and pine, there were eyes watching, vehicles lurking, and secrets buried beneath sanctified ground. Noah Vance had already left hours earlier, just before first light. He moved like a shadow through terrain he didn't need to see to understand. Dressed in a charcoal thermal jacket and forest camo, his lean frame disappeared between trees like smoke. Years of covert surveillance work had taught him how to track footsteps in dry moss, read the flight pattern of startled birds, and interpret silence not as calm but as signal. His plan was simple: get eyes on the compound, find the chapel, confirm if Rachel Monroe, or the other twin, was alive. Then return. Back at the tower, Clint was crouched by the fire pit just outside, boiling water for oatmeal, his movements slow and deliberate. Aaron Langford sat with the girl at the ranger's old desk, reviewing every drawing again. The girl had begun sketching new details overnight, this time, not of places but of people. One showed a tall man in ceremonial robes with a crescent-shaped scar over his left eye. Another depicted a child in a white dress with bound hands. The girl's lines were shakier than before. Something in her posture was tighter. She had stopped pointing or explaining. She simply drew and turned away. Axel sat by the door, eyes fixed on the tree line, his ears twitching with every distant crow or creaking branch. The German shepherd looked more alert than ever, as if his instinct knew what was coming even before Clint did. "I don't like the change in her," Aaron said softly, folding the newest drawing. "She's pulling in again. Like she's bracing herself." Clint stirred the pot slowly. "She knows something. Something about the date. That it's close. Closer than we thought," Aaron said, glancing toward the horizon. "We're out of time. Suddenly, Axel let out a sharp bark, not panicked, not warning, more like an announcement. A figure was moving up the trail, hands raised, coat streaked with mud. Vance. He moved with a limp now, right thigh darkened with what looked like blood. But his face was composed, jaw tight and gaze focused. Clint rushed to him, catching his elbow. "What the hell happened?" "Tripwire," Vance grunted. "North perimeter. They've laid traps. I must have triggered one near the lower slope." Erin came quickly with supplies, directing Vance into the tower. She wrapped and cleaned the shallow shrapnel wound while he spoke. "The chapel's real. So is the underground space. I spotted 2 guards moving supplies into a trapdoor hidden behind the altar." Clint frowned. "And Rachel?" "I saw a woman through a barred window, underground. Couldn't get closer. Long blonde hair, pale, wearing the same clothing as the girl described. Looked malnourished, but alert." Erin pressed the bandage against his thigh. "And the other children?" "There's a separate dormitory. Fenced off. I counted at least a dozen through a slit in the siding. Some sleep. Some are just sitting. No supervision inside the structure, Carter's keeping them contained like livestock." Clint stood, fists tightening. "How heavily armed?" "Light. Private security, not militia grade. But they've got motion sensors and field cameras. They're expecting something. The event happening tomorrow. I saw a shipment being unloaded, robes, candles, even printed programs." "Programs?" Erin said sharply. "It's a service." "Exactly. Carter's planning a spectacle. Something public but deeply controlled. They're calling it, the return to wholeness." Clint turned to the girl, who sat quietly with her drawings spread like a prayer circle. "We have to go in tonight," he said. "If we wait, we risk her sister, and Rachel." Erin looked at him. "We don't even know if we can get past the sensors." Axel stood then, and moved to the girl. She placed a hand on his head and leaned down, whispering something into his ear that neither adult could hear. The dog's posture shifted instantly, more alert, more focused. She stood and crossed the room, tugged on Clint's sleeve, and held out another drawing. It showed a tunnel, narrow, marked with faint arrows pointing away from the chapel toward a wooded edge. There were words scribbled at the top in a child's shaky hand. "Storm Tunnel." "Behind the west fence." Clint met Erin's eyes. "She knows the way in. She must have used it to escape," Erin realized aloud. Vance winced as he stood. "Then we've got one shot. Tonight. We take the tunnel. We go silent. We get them out." Clint nodded. "I'll call the sheriff's office, leave a pre-recorded message to trigger in the morning in case we don't come back. If we do, I delete it. If not." Erin interrupted, her voice like steel. "You'll come back." Outside, the forest was beginning to breathe deeper with the approach of dusk. Clint packed light, his service pistol, a shortwave radio, first aid, rope, and flashlight. Vance carried a suppressed Glock, plus signal flares and a tactical blade. Erin, against Clint's protest, brought a tranquilizer kit and medical gauze. She wasn't staying behind. The girl watched them quietly, then stepped to Clint and placed something in his palm. A piece of metal shaped like a key. Carved into it was the same I symbol, this time with a single vertical line slashing through it. "She took this from someone," Clint whispered. "A guard? A gate?" Axel barked once. "She says yes," Erin said, reading the girl's nod. Night fell. By 9 p.m., they had made their way through the dense forest, Axel guiding them with uncanny precision. The girl remained behind at the tower under a makeshift barricade of logs and Erin's emergency radio beacon. She had drawn one final map, an escape path in case of pursuit. At the western fence, Vance found the storm tunnel entrance half buried beneath rocks and leaves. Clint pulled the grate open with effort, heart pounding. They descended in silence, cold water brushing their boots, the tunnel smelling of rust and mildew. 40 yards in, a rusted hatch door marked with the slashed I symbol loomed. Clint held up the key. They were in. The storm tunnel swallowed them whole. Clint Harper moved first, weapon drawn low, his flashlight beam muted by a piece of red cloth wrapped around its lens. Behind him, Noah Vance limped slightly but kept pace, pistol steady, eyes sweeping the sides of the narrow, dripping corridor. Erin Langford brought up the rear, her hands steady despite the pulse pounding in her throat. She wasn't built for combat, tall and lean, with soft hands made for healing, not harm, but determination lit her features. Her auburn hair was tied back, and her satchel of medical gear pressed close to her hip. The tunnel reeked of old mold and rusted iron, its concrete walls tight with moisture. Axel padded silently beside Clint, never once hesitating, his thick coat bristling whenever they approached a turn. The German shepherd's body moved with the practiced grace of something forged in fire, muscle, instinct, loyalty. After 40 yards, the tunnel sloped upward, ending at a rusted maintenance hatch. Clint inserted the key the girl had given him. It slid in too easily. Trap. Vance whispered. Clint shook his head. No. A code. She wanted us to know they wouldn't expect this path. Too old. Too quiet. With a soft metallic groan, the hatch opened inward. Cold air filtered in, sterile and unnatural. The tunnel emerged into a dim underground corridor lined with rough stone and newer construction. Reinforced walls, camera wiring. Underground chapel. Aaron breathed. No, Vance said, scanning the corridor. Holding wing. Part of the original bunker foundation they've repurposed. They moved quickly. Clint took point, counting doors. Most were locked. Behind one, faint humming, a child's voice. At the fourth door, Aaron stopped. Listen, she whispered. Inside, quiet breathing. Then a faint clink of chain. Clint knelt and peeked through the barred opening. A woman lay on a cot in the corner, blonde hair matted, skin pale, arms limp at her side. But her chest rose, shallow but rhythmic. Rachel Monroe, Clint breathed. She didn't respond. Vance worked fast, using bolt cutters on the outdated lock. The door creaked open. Clint rushed to her side and checked her pulse, faint but there. Aaron knelt beside him, pulling a saline injector from her bag. She worked with clinical speed, inserting fluids into Rachel's arm as Axel stood watch at the door. She's dehydrated, starved. But alive, Aaron confirmed. Rachel's eyelids fluttered. Her cracked lips parted. Lily? She's safe, Clint whispered. She sent us. The woman's eyes brimmed with tears that never fell. Her voice was no more than air. Emma, still here. Clint nodded. We'll get her. They moved quickly now. Vance mapped the corridor in his mind, directing them toward a side stairwell marked primary chapel access. The hallway curved toward a guarded door with a red light above it. Voices beyond, two men, laughing faintly. Clint nodded to Axel. The dog responded immediately. With a blur of motion, Axel lunged at the door as Clint opened it, knocking one guard to the ground. The second raised a baton but was met with Vance's shoulder and the butt of a pistol. Both men fell silent. Aaron stayed behind to tend to Rachel while Clint and Vance ascended the narrow stairwell. Above them, voices echoed, chanting, slow and rhythmic. They reached the trapdoor behind the altar just as the ceremony began. The chapel above was candlelit, ringed by robed figures. At the center stood Reverend Elias Carter, a man in his mid-50s, tall and silver-haired, with hollow cheeks and pale blue eyes. He wore a robe embroidered with the all-seeing eye symbol, now marked in crimson. He raised his arms to the congregation. Before him stood a small child with blonde hair braided tight, Emma. The crowd murmured phrases like scripture. Union. Purification. Wholeness. Clint's blood ran cold. Vance whispered, "We need a distraction." Clint nodded and triggered a smoke flare, tossing it up the steps. As white clouds billowed into the chapel, screams erupted. Clint burst through the trapdoor, gun raised, shouting, "Federal agent. Drop your weapons." Chaos erupted. Congregants panicked. A few guards reached for weapons but hesitated. Vance fired a warning shot into the rafters. Axel charged through the smoke, barking furiously, driving the robed guards backward. Carter remained calm. He reached for Emma's shoulder, trying to pull her away, but she shrieked and broke free, running toward the smoke. Clint caught her mid-step, wrapping her in his arms. "You're okay. We've got you." Vance tackled the nearest robed figure attempting to flee. "Stay down," he barked. Carter, expression unreadable, turned and bolted for the eastern door. Clint moved to chase him but stopped. Emma mattered more. He secured the child in his jacket and rushed her down the stairwell toward Aaron. In the bunker, Rachel stirred again. As Clint entered with Emma, Rachel's eyes opened fully for the first time. "Emma," she whispered. The child broke into a sob. "Mommy." They embraced. Rachel cried silently, pressing Emma's head to her chest. Erin turned away, tears in her own eyes. Outside, sirens began wailing. Vance had triggered the signal. Deputies from Grey Ridge were converging, led by Interim Sheriff Dana Rowe, a stocky, no-nonsense woman in her late 40s with close-cropped blonde hair and eyes that had seen too much grief. She had once served under Clint before transferring to lead patrol in Grey Ridge when Clint stepped away from duty. She respected him like a brother and took orders without pause. "Compound surrounded," she reported. "Dozens of kids. All accounted for. Medical units en route." Clint nodded. "Carter?" "Gone," Vance said, face grim. "He had a backup route. I found tire tracks near the service road. He planned this." Clint looked to Rachel, who clutched both daughters now. Her gaze met his, weak but steady. "He'll come back," she whispered. "He always does." The morning after the raid broke over Grey Ridge like a fog that refused to lift. The sun was up, but it couldn't seem to cut through the chill. At the edge of the makeshift triage zone set up near the now-abandoned compound, Clint Harper stood on a patch of dead grass beside his truck, his boots muddy, arms crossed tightly. The girls, Lily and Emma, were safe inside one of the heated trailers brought in by Child Protection Services. Their mother, Rachel Monroe, slept under observation with an 4 in her arm and her daughters beside her, curled into the same narrow cot like twin seedlings buried deep in shared soil. The air still carried the scent of burnt incense, mixed with diesel fumes from the generators. Reverberations of the night's chaos still pulsed beneath the surface, flickers of torchlight, distant chanting, Carter's voice echoing from memory like an unfinished psalm. Sheriff Dana Rowe approached, her heavy-duty uniform speckled with ash. At 48, Dana had the physical heft of someone who preferred field work to filing cabinets. Her short blonde hair was damp with sweat, and her square jaw tightened each time someone mentioned Reverend Carter's name. "We've swept every building," she reported. "Cleared 47 individuals. All either congregation members or security, none with leadership roles." "And Carter?" Clint asked. "Gone. There's a fire trail off the ridge. We found fresh tire tracks but no vehicle. He must have had a pickup waiting. He planned his escape," Clint said, jaw clenched. "Just like Rachel said he would." "He left behind more than he thought," Dana added. "Those drawings, that staging." The entire ceremony was recorded. One of the guards had a drone camera feeding back to a hidden room. Noah Vance emerged from behind the chapel ruins, wiping dirt from his hands. The bandage on his leg was dirty but intact. He looked tired but sharp, his silver-flecked eyes always alert. "Good news," he said. "We recovered a hard drive. Unencrypted. Surveillance logs, lists of names, financial flows. He wasn't just preaching, he was laundering money, possibly trafficking." Erin Langford joined them next, still in her same jeans and jacket from the night before. She hadn't changed or rested. Her freckles stood out on her pale skin, and the loose strands of auburn hair falling from her ponytail framed her face like weathered lace. Her hands were red from washing, her voice hoarse from hours of calming children. "I've spoken with 9 of the rescued kids," she said quietly. "Most of them are nonverbal. Some remember their names. One girl kept repeating a phrase, 'The fire brings us home.'" She shook her head. This was more than indoctrination. This was systematic. Rachel had briefly awakened earlier. When Clint had entered the trailer, she tried to sit up but failed. Still, her voice had carried. "He said I was the vessel," she whispered. "That the daughters were proof. Twins meant completion, balance. When I tried to leave, he punished me. Took Emma. Told me Lily had never existed. He fractured her world," Erin had said then. "Tried to rewrite her reality. And yet, both girls had survived. That, more than anything, made Clint believe in something greater than strategy or luck." Axel was resting near the edge of the trailer now, his body finally still, eyes half-lidded. The German shepherd looked older than he had 2 days ago, streaks of dried blood still faint in his coat, paws raw from hours of travel. But he remained alert to movement, tail thumping faintly each time either twin stirred. Erin had cleaned and dressed his feet earlier, whispering thanks with every rap. Noah looked up from the papers he'd spread on the hood of the SUV. There's one more problem, he said. The financial trail ends in Ashland, Oregon. But the money started in Tennessee. A different group. Different doctrine. This wasn't isolated. You're saying Carter was part of something bigger, Dana said. I'm saying he's a middle link, Vance replied. He had connections, funding, and protection. And if someone that organized let him build this place out here, then they'll try again. The idea hung in the air like smoke from last night's fire. Clint turned toward the trailer. Through the fogged window, he could just make out the silhouettes of the girls and Rachel. A nurse sat with them now, gently washing Emma's hair with a warm cloth. Lily stared out the window, eyes locking with Clint's. She didn't wave, didn't smile. Just nodded, soft, steady, like a confirmation. He stepped away from the others and walked into the woods. The silence welcomed him. Among the moss and pine, he pulled out the worn drawing Lily had given him back at the Ranger Tower, the one with the twin figures and the dog. He unfolded it slowly, then pulled from his pocket another item he had taken from Rachel's room the night before, a second drawing, identical, but incomplete. The edges aligned. The message was clear, they had survived, but the picture wasn't finished. As he returned to the group, Dana stepped forward. What now? We protect them, Clint said. We testify. We hunt Carter if we have to. And we make sure this never happens again. What about you? Erin asked, her voice softer. He looked toward the trailer again. I'm staying with them. For now. Until the world makes sense again. Then we're all staying, Erin replied. At least until they're safe. Axel raised his head, as if in agreement. And beneath the rising sky, the storm that had once loomed over Gray Ridge began, slowly, to break. Evil often hides in the places we trust most, behind soft voices and sacred walls. But so too does salvation, in the courage of a child who refuses to be broken, in a dog who never forgets his training, and in the hearts of those who choose to protect rather than look away. We are reminded that silence doesn't mean weakness, and sometimes the ones who cannot speak have the clearest message of all. So if this story moved you, share it. Pray for the protectors in this world, both human and canine. And if you believe in second chances and justice for the voiceless, type Amen in the comments below.